Now there has been a video released that is very compelling. Or someone had connected that it could have been a remote device that went off. So watch this. Okay.
As he grabs the squib off of Charlie, puts it in his pocket. Watch closely. The one guy grabs the squib, gives it to the guy with the polo, he puts it in his pocket. Now the other guy that I once said, press the remote for the squib, takes the remote, puts it in the other guy's pocket, and he takes off. So the first guy gets the squib that was on the neck. Watch closely. So, boom, shot. There's the guy at the blue, puts it in his pocket. Here's the guy at the remote, puts it in his pocket.
We love Charlie Kirk. We loved his voice, his passion, his stubborn willingness to say what so many others would not. We loved the person behind the podium, the husband, the son, the friend, and because we love him, because we care about truth and justice, we refuse to be quiet until every last credible question is answered. This is not about politics. This is about a life cut short and about whether the full story has been told. Tonight we go straight to the core of the most explosive claim in this case. The allegation that a device was attached to Charlie's lapel microphone, that it was triggered, and that the footage which could prove or disprove that claim has been withheld. We will walk through what that allegation means, what would prove it, and why the possibility that Tyler Robinson did not pull the trigger cannot be brushed aside without transparent, forensic proof. Start with a clear idea. Microphones are not just sound tools. In an event like this, they are evidence. The mic pack clipped to a jacket, the transmitter and its serial number, the audio recordings from the tech booth, the hallway cameras that capture the handoff, all of these are part of the documentary record. If someone were to plant a device on a mic, the best place to find proof is in those routine, pre-show records. Those are the files and logs that show who touched the pack, who tested it, and what it sounded like before the public ever heard a word. The most disturbing fact we must confront is this. Those pre-show files are reported missing or unavailable for independent review. That absence, in a case this serious, is not a trivial production error. It is a gap that must be explained. Imagine the moments before a big event, technicians with headsets, a console full of channels, an assistant holding a mic case, the sound engineer calling levels, and a technician clipping a pack to the speaker's belt. Each of those actions is typically recorded and logged. A mic check is run and saved. Someone photographs serial numbers or enters them into a manifest. The minutes before a show are routine and documented precisely because those records prove what happened if something goes wrong. If a device had been attached, the pre-show footage and equipment logs would show the hand that did it, or at least show who had the pack last. That is why those records matter so urgently now. We must be careful with language because these are allegations that carry weight. People are saying that a remote-triggered device was found or could have been attached to the microphone pack. Others say that the idea is implausible without proof. We are not here to assert without evidence. We are here to ask hard questions and to demand the documents that will produce hard answers. What follows is a plain explanation of what needs to be tested, why it matters, and how the existence or absence of particular files will change how we think about Tyler Robinson and his role in this tragedy. If a device was attached to the microphone pack, it would leave traces. Physical traces are the simplest: fingerprints, tool marks, adhesive residue, a mismatched serial number, or a recently opened casing on the pack. Digital traces are equally important. The tech booth audio file from the mic check would show whether the transmitter keyed differently or whether unusual electrical noise was present. Vendor logs and equipment manifests would show whether the transmitter assigned to that channel matched the unit on the pack. Chain of custody documentation would show who retrieved the pack after the event and what labs received it. The absence of these items does not prove a device was used, but it does mean that the most straightforward way to prove or disprove the allegation has not been publicly resolved. Now consider the set of questions every independent investigator should be asking. Where is the original mic check audio in its native file format? Where are the backstage or hallway camera exports showing the pack being handled? Who signed the equipment manifest and when? Are there vendor logs showing when any files were uploaded, copied, or modified? Who photographed the pack at the time it was collected from the stage? What does the chain of custody paperwork show about who bagged and transported the pack to evidence? These are procedural questions that lead to clarity. They are not wild conspiracy rhetoric. Any competent forensic process begins exactly here. The next vital point is acoustic and forensic testing. Multiple independently verifiable analyses can be run once originals are produced. Audio waveform comparison between the production feed and cell phone videos taken in the audience can be used to perform acoustic triangulation that estimates where a sound originated. Metadata and file hashes preserved in the original files show whether re-encoding or editing occurred. Forensic imaging of any recovered device can reveal whether it contained a remotely triggered module, whether it had activation logs, and whether it was truly attached or simply nearby. These are standard, non-exotic procedures used by courts and labs in serious cases. They are the difference between rumor and conclusion. Equally important is to address the question of trajectory and ballistics, because they tie into whether the shot could have come from a device on a mic or from a shooter located elsewhere. Medical reports indicating the path of a bullet and where it entered a body are crucial. If the trajectory suggests a shot from behind or level with the stage, that complicates a rooftop shooter scenario. If ballistics show the recovered bullet is inconsistent with the rifle presented as evidence, that raises enormous questions about who fired and where the shot originated. Again, these are matters for certified forensic labs and for independent experts to examine. Public conversation must be driven by those lab reports, not by speculation alone. Let's be honest about the human stakes. A family grieves. An accused person sits in custody. The public seeks closure. If Tyler Robinson did not pull the trigger, then we are looking at a profound miscarriage of justice. If he did, then impartial, verified science should show that. The only path to resolve this is through transparent production of the raw files and rigorous independent testing. That is the only way the community can be confident in the outcome. We also have to talk about proximity and access. People are reporting that an individual with non-technical credentials had unusual proximity to the mic pack during setup. Proximity does not equal guilt, but it is relevant to the chain of custody story. Who had legitimate reason to touch the pack? Typically, the vendor or authorized production staff handle transmitters. Was anyone outside that circle seen near the pack? Did anyone record those moments on a phone? If a person had a unique angle and later the footage from that angle disappears or is never produced, investigators must ask why. Did that person hand their device to authorities? Were they interviewed? Did they surrender files? These are not accusatory demands. They are ordinary steps investigators take to fill holes in a timeline. There are 3 plausible, non-sensational explanations for missing pre-show footage. One is technical failure. Recordings can be corrupted, devices can overwrite, backups can fail. This happens. 2 is human error. A file could be misfiled, misnamed, or accidentally deleted during routine post-production. 3 is intentional withholding. Footage could be retained or restricted by parties with legal reasons or institutional concerns, or worse, by parties with motives to shape the narrative. The difference between these explanations is material. Technical failure or human error should be demonstrable by vendor logs and recovery attempts. Intentional withholding should be subject to judicial review and, if necessary, court-ordered production under protective conditions. The critical point is that each possibility leaves documentary traces. Demanding them is not paranoia, it is due process. We must discuss how the public should respond, carefully and responsibly. If you were at the event and you have original, unaltered files, do not post compressed versions to social media. Preserve originals. Make forensic copies. Hand them to accredited journalists or legal counsel who understand chain of custody and metadata preservation. If you are a journalist with fragments, preserve the originals and, where appropriate, submit them for forensic authentication rather than publishing potentially misleading snippets that cannot be verified. If you are a member of the public demanding transparency, push for court-supervised disclosure. Courts can protect sensitive material under seal while allowing independent experts to test them. That is how truth and privacy can both be respected. Now let us address the likely counterarguments and the kinds of denials you will hear. Some will say that suggesting a device existed is irresponsible when no lab has confirmed it. They are right to caution against premature conclusions. Others will say that calling for the files is simply conspiracy feeding. That is wrong, because requesting original records and independent analysis is the standard approach in any contested criminal investigation. We do not accept claims or denials at face value. We ask for evidence and for neutral, expert testing. That is the right, modest, and rigorous path. It is also important to recognize how narrative control works. Releasing selected clips creates impressions. A curated clip of the onstage moment without the pre-show footage produces a tidy story: event, shot, suspect. If other angles or mic check recordings exist, withholding them steers the narrative away from documentary truth. Whoever controls the media that reaches the public has enormous power to shape belief. That is precisely why courts and independent labs must be brought into this to make the facts speak for themselves rather than leaving the public to guess. Think about what would happen if the mic check audio, the backstage feeds, and the tech logs are produced and show routine checks and no tampering. That would be an enormous relief for many. It would help the public focus on ballistics, line of fire, and corroborating witness accounts to reconcile how the tragedy occurred. It would not necessarily ease every doubt, but it would close the most plausible route for the device theory. Conversely, if those files show a hand placing or modifying a pack, or if forensic images of a recovered device show a remote activation log, then this case changes dramatically and must be prosecuted on that evidence. That is the point. The truth either exonerates or implicates, and we must follow it. There is also a secondary but important set of steps to take. Independent acoustic analysts should be permitted to analyze all recorded audio. Phone videos that show ambient sound from different positions in the room can be synchronized and used for triangulation. A synchronized analysis could show whether the origin of the sound was the stage, a mic pack, or a point in the audience or nearby rooftop. That kind of analysis is technical but accessible to impartial experts. File metadata and hashes must be preserved to ensure that what is being tested is authentic, not a re-encoded or edited copy. We must not overlook the legal side. Defense counsel should be aggressive in demanding production of all raw files and vendor logs in discovery. Prosecutors have the duty to preserve exculpatory evidence and to allow defense experts to test the same materials they rely on. If material is withheld unjustifiably, courts must enforce discovery obligations. The integrity of the legal process depends on giving both sides access to the same documentary record. We must also remember the social cost when files go missing. Without transparency, suspicion fills the emptiness, and rumor becomes a stand-in for fact. That harms the grieving family, it harms the accused if they are innocent, and it harms public trust in institutions charged with investigating our most serious crimes. Transparency is not a favor to one side or another, it is the mechanism by which society decides what really happened. Finally, let us return to the human core of this story. Charlie Kirk's friends, family, and supporters deserve a full accounting. The man who sat in custody deserves a fair process. The public deserves a credible, evidence-based explanation. Love for a person means demanding thoroughness, not settling for a tidy headline. If you love someone, you do not walk away when questions remain. You push for the files. You insist on independent testing. You protect the evidence and let the scientists speak. This is not a script for outrage. It is a script for process. Produce the mic check files in native formats. Produce the backstage camera exports and vendor manifests. Produce the chain of custody documentation. Allow independent forensic labs to image devices and run audio triangulation. Let the courts supervise the disclosure when privacy concerns are real. If the results show no tampering, then the country can move forward with clearer answers and the grieving can begin to find some measure of closure. If the results reveal tampering, then perpetrators must be found and prosecuted. Either way, answers are what we demand, and they are what Charlie Kirk's family, Tyler Robinson, and the public deserve. We will not stop asking. We will not be satisfied with curated clips or vaguely worded statements. We will keep insisting that the documentary record be produced and tested in neutral labs under judicial oversight. That is how we honor a life lost and how we honor the principles of justice that should guide every inquiry. If you have original footage from the pre-show moment, preserve the files in their original format and contact legal counsel or an accredited news organization that will preserve the metadata and chain of custody. If you are a journalist with fragments, hold originals and seek forensic authentication. If you are a member of the public, demand transparent, court-supervised disclosure. Do not let the absence of evidence be sold as certainty. We love Charlie Kirk. We want the truth. We will not be quiet until the record is made whole.